Hey, so today I'm just gonna give you guys my first impression of this ProTech Malibu, and I know there's a bunch of videos out there on the internet that have already reviewed it, and so this thing's already been reviewed to death. So here I'm just gonna give you my impression of the knife and my first time actually owning a ProTech knife, and my first time actually getting a Malibu from them also. So this knife is a very popular knife, as you guys already know. Um, Very hard to come by. I think it was released 2020. I want to say like near the end of 2020, sometime between there. And so yeah, it's a very hard knife to come by, and it's a good knife. And I'm just gonna give you guys my impression and my expectation of it, and maybe compare it to some other knives. And yeah, we'll go from there. So I got the ProTech Malibu DLC in I think it's S45VN. So it's a crucible steel, and it's one of the newer steel that Chris Reeve Knife has developed and using their own knives. And I guess BladeHQ um, did an exclusive with ProTech, and they put the steel on this knife. I think usually it's like a 20 CV knife steel, and that's comparable to M390 from what I've heard. And I think S45VN is more or less comparable to LMAX. And I heard it's a little bit better than LMAX. I don't, I'm not a metal material scientist, so I don't really know the real specs behind it. But from what I read, I heard it's better than LMAX, and like a little bit below uh, the M390 and CV20, but it makes up for, I guess, in toughness, I think. So it's less prone to um, chipping. It's the blade will roll more. It's a little bit tougher, so I think it rolls before it would chip. So that's what I heard. I could be wrong, or I might be mixing up my information, but regardless. So yeah, I've been anticipating this knife for quite a while. When I first saw it released at SHOT Show back in 2020, I really liked the design of the knife in terms of the looks, and its sleek lines and stuff like that. And it's just like, very, very well designed knife. Here I have the reverse tonto. I really want to get the reverse tonto because I like the blade shape of it. I think it looks a little bit better than the Warncliffe, and it looks a bit more unique and different. So that's why I got the reverse tonto. So yeah, so if you guys can see here, it's ProTech, and well, we can't really see it on camera because it's kind of, my camera's kind of shit. But yeah, it's CPM S45VN, and so it's an upgrade from S35. If you own any sort of Sabenza, that's kind of the standard of Sabenza. Nowadays, they've moved on to a 45 standard, and yeah, it's so far. I've used it to cut box and stuff. I mean, it works. Nothing wrong with it. And it cuts really well. The edge, or the tip here, is really good for sort of like draw cutting. So I've been doing that a lot on cardboard, cut tape, stuff like that. Really good tip for doing that. So, what are my impressions of the knife? As everyone said, it's a really fun, sort of fidgety knife. You can sit here for days just doing this, and I think the reason why it's so fidgety, it's because it's not a frame lock. And so, because without the frame here, you basically don't have a detent. So like a Sabenza here, you have a detent. I mean, you can't really compare these two knives because one's a flipper and one's like a manual open. But let me grab another knife instead. Okay, for example, this Shergov Neon, or Neon Zero, or whatever, I forgot the name of it. But basically, this is pretty drop shutty. I mean, that's what everyone wants, right? They want the kind of the drop shutty ness of a knife, very smooth. And this one doesn't drop as quick as the ProTech, and it's because of the detent on the lock frame side right here. That detent, it adds a bit of pressure inwards, so when the blade's coming shut, there's more resistance. Where because this is not a frame lock, it's almost like an integral lock, but it's not really, or integral frame, but it's not. It's just got like a sort of like almost an access type lock. It's just a button lock, but because there's no real detent, the knife just kind of falls under its own weight, and there's nothing really to kind of stop it. And that's why it's so, like, just by pushing the button, it falls on its own. You really don't have to do anything, which is cool. And it's running on bearings too, but I don't think the bearings really um, matter too much. I mean, I think if you put this on a washer, it would just be just as smooth, like a Paramare PM3 from Spyderco, like my PM3 here. Same thing. There's not really any detent, so when you push on the button, it kind of just falls shuts on its own. And this is on just regular bronze washers. And so, in terms of smoothness of the knife and everything, it feels smooth. It's fun to flick. But there are a couple of things that I don't particularly like about the knife, or I think should be improved on the knife. As you know, everyone raves about this knife. But there are a couple of things that when I got it, it kind of didn't meet my expectations. But then again, we each have our own sort of expectation of the knife when we first saw it. So for me, it's definitely a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be. And that's not really a big issue because I generally do like small knives. I like my knives to be less than 3.5 and weigh a certain amount. And I have like medium size hand, and I definitely want to for it to kind of fill out my grip and not have any hot spots. So those are the main kind of requirements when I handle a knife. If it's got any hot spots or it feels a little weird and funky in the hand, then I definitely will send it back. But yeah, I thought it was going to be a little bit. I guess in the pictures it looks a lot bigger, especially this reverse blade tonsil. It makes the knife look a lot bigger than it is, but once you actually get it, it's really small. Like when I received this box, I thought it was going to be like definitely a bigger knife. Excuse me there. Yeah, but it's definitely smaller than expected, so kind of show you what it came with anyways. And pull this ribbon off. And yeah, you can kind of see the information about the knife there. Yeah, black handle, DLC, reverse tanto. It says S45 there. And yeah, I think what's used on here is just aluminum and nothing really special. But yeah, it came in the box. It came with a little nice little pouch. But I thought when I took it out of the pouch, I thought it was gonna be a lot bigger, but it is really a lot smaller. So if you have big hands, if you grip it like this, it's gonna feel a little weird. Like it won't fill out your hand, definitely. So there's a bit of a void here when I grip it like this. It feels more. It doesn't quite fill out my hand. But then again, I think for the most part, it's still a pretty good sized knife. But I think it definitely is smaller than what I thought it was going to be. The closest knife I would say that's the closest competitor to this knife here, I would say would be the Benchmade 940, because they kind of have the same design philosophy in a sense that they're not a frame lock, and they're kind of like they use a button or some sort of like mechanism to actuate the knife and to flip it out really quickly like this. And they use a very similar blade. They both use reverse tonsils. They both use really pretty similar steel. And they cost about the same amount. I think. Well, I guess if you're going for the 940, 941 or 940-1 Benchmade, the carbon fiber one, the cost is about the same. This was listed for $240 on BladeHQ's website, and I was able to pick it up. I paid a little bit of tax for it, and it came out to be about a total of $260 for me here. And so, same thing with the carbon fiber Benchmade. Let me go ahead. I think I have one in the corner here. Let me pull it out for you guys. So yeah, my 940 here. It's also got a reverse tonsil and slightly different. There's more of a swedge here, like a swoop here, to kind of break up the knife. But yeah, in terms of like the knife, they're very very similar. So axis lock, you're pretty familiar with it. Pretty quick to actuate. Same thing with this. Both very fidgety knife. I would say the axis lock is probably a little bit less weak compared to the button lock here, because the Omega springs, they're the weak point of the axis lock for sure. Um, you know, you flip them enough time, they will break. I had mine broke on mine before, but you can always get custom upgrades for it and stuff like that. But that's the only thing with the axis lock, is that um, the Omega spring is a little the weak point of this. Where the button lock here, there's only really one moving part. It's just a button going back and forth, and that's really it. Well, here you got, like, two springs, and you gotta release this, and it's gonna move kind of. And so there's 2 points of failure because each spring can break. Where this one it's got an internal spring here that goes this way, and that spring doesn't really see any action, and I don't think that spring can be really damaged or um, you know destroyed in any way. Where the Omega spring is a little bit um, thinner, and it's just one, like, piece of metal. It's not a coil, and so the Omega spring is definitely the weak point of the axis lock. But yeah, they're very similar knife. They hold about the same in the hand if you were to grip it. I think the Omega, the Benchmade here, 9.4, definitely feels better in my hands. But this is one of my first knife. I had the 943, which is the I think the drop down blade, not the reverse tonto, but 943 was my first, like, high end knife, I guess, for first high end production knife. And yeah, since then I've gotten this one, and I think I still like the handle on the Osborne here. It's really nice. Where there's nothing really wrong with this per se, but I just feel like there's a little bit more void, or maybe because there's no jimping where I expect there to be jimping or grip, and so my hand kind of feels a little weird when I grip it like this. But it's not that bad. It's not that bad, but it's just smaller than I thought it would be. Blade length, blade length to handle ratio is pretty good. You almost get like a full blade here, like at this very tip. I'm sure my camera can't pick it up, but it basically sits like less than a millimeter under the blade here, under the handle here. So really good blade to handle ratio. I think it's a 3.3 inch blade, and yeah, it's pretty nice. Other reason why I say it's very comparable to Benchmade is, I guess, oops, I almost dropped my knife and cut myself there. Because I guess I had the bug out clip on here, so they're very similar. Like they almost sit. You can kind of see they almost sit as deep as, like, if I were to put it in my pockets. They both sit about the same length. They poke out just a hair, so they sit very similarly in my pants when I wear them. And I guess if you get the regular 940, they also come with aluminum handles and not carbon fiber handles. And so yeah, I would say these two are very comparable to each other. They even have like the swedge here where you can kind of index your finger. And yeah, the Osborne's got a little bit more handle to it for sure. Well, I mean, the blade on this is a little bit longer too. The blade is like 3.5, I believe. But yeah, in terms of like action, they're both really smooth, and they're fun to flick. If you have the aluminum handles, I think it'd be a little bit more comparable, but I have the carbon fiber handles. So yeah, I say these two knives are relatively very similar in design. The only thing I don't like is I never liked aluminum handles. I used to have the aluminum handles on my 943, and I really dislike that because I had that knife for about 2 years or so, and it started showing wear, and aluminum being a softer metal, it got more dense in it easily. The anodizing came off by itself. Like, you would rub it, and the anodizing would just kind of slowly come off by itself, and it got really chipped. And overall, it, like, the new aluminum did not feel premium, I guess. And that's my only issue. That's why I'm worried about this knife. That the aluminum will eventually wear and will show wear, especially in a knife that, like, it's murdered out, I guess, because it's all black. Aluminum showing under this, like the raw aluminum, might not look too good. This is not my first choice of knife. Or not my first choice of Malibu. I wanted the just the regular 20 CV in like a I guess either a stone wash or a satin wash, or satin satin type of finish on it rather than the DLC. I never really liked DLC knives. I had several different DLC knives, and they're all kind of like I guess. Like either the DLC wears out really quickly, or it just doesn't look right. I had DLC Benchmades. I didn't like those. The DLC on whatever DLC Benchmade uses wasn't that great. It came off kind of quickly. I had zero tolerance 450s in DLC. And I just never really liked the DLC blade, but this was my only way of getting a hand on a MSRP Malibu without going on eBay or on Reddit or something and buying a used one for slightly more premium. So I'm okay with it. I mean, it still looks nice. The Murder Out look still looks really nice. But yeah, I think I prefer a regular bead blast, or not bead blast, but a regular um, finish on it, and not a DLC finish. But it's still pretty cool, pretty tactical knife there. I think I kind of poked myself there. Oops. But what I don't like about the knife also here, besides the aluminum handle, is the backspacer. I think it's kind of an ugly backspacer. It's got like this line right down there, and that just doesn't look good. I really don't like that. It looks like, if you ever, build model kits and stuff like that, it's kind of like a mold line or a line where you can kind of see it. It just doesn't look premium. It doesn't look nice. I definitely wish the backspacer was easily swappable. Change it out. Either to have like a backspacer like like a Shirogorov where it looks like this. If they're gonna go for sort of a I guess a texture or a knurling or some sort of texture here, I'd rather them do something like a Shirogorov, or if they opt for a smooth one, like like a smooth backspacer like this one would be nice. Like just looks cleaner and nicer. I really don't like that how it's kind of got these grooves in here. I get it. It's supposed to be like jimping, but when you grip it like this, you're not really ever. This jimping here doesn't even meet your palm. Like I don't know what the purpose of this backspacer is, and I really just don't like how it looks. Maybe there'll be someone will come up with a way to swap this out for a metal backspacer, because I think it's G10 or something. I don't really know what this backspacer is. Maybe it is built into the handle and I'm just being weird here. But yeah, I wish we can swap out the backspacer. And the lanyard hole, I think they could have just done without the lanyard hole either. Like I don't see any value or any purpose of them adding this lanyard hole. It's kind of like more of an afterthought. I really love how Shiro does their lanyard hole. It doesn't really look like a hole. It's there if you want to use it, but if you don't want to use it, it's out. It's not visible. You really don't see it. It's hidden. This one is like they look like they just poked a hole into the handle and it's kind of there. Like yeah, you don't really see it from the sides, but when you look at from it behind, it just doesn't look good. It's just there. It kind of really looks like a butthole, I guess, and that just to me kind of bad design there in terms of aesthetics. Um, Chris Reeves got their lanyard hole, but I mean at least with their lanyard hole, you can kind of just put a plug in there or something. Or Spyderco, same thing here. With my Spyderco, I just put a plug in there because I don't really use lanyards as much. But these are fine. You can put some sort of decorative piece in there, and it looks gives it a little bit more accent, something cool. But yeah, with the Malibu, it's just kind of ugly. This lanyard hole just not that great. I don't like that. Another hit on this, because I've been trying to disassemble this knife, but turns out I don't have a 1/16 Allen wrench for these two holes back here, and that kind of puzzled me because I was just using a T6 to try to remove the screws, and I just could not get these things to rotate, and I was like, oh crap, maybe they're Allen size, and I tried to find 1/16 or whatever size these are, and I couldn't find one. So I was unable to disassemble this knife. I wanted to take it apart and clean it, and add a little bit of oil to the button. This is what I heard, but I heard the DLCs has a bit of I guess button stick or lock stick, and I think that's because the DLC either on the button itself or on the knife, it adds a bit of a adds like a very thin layer of like paint or DLC, which when they manufactured this, they didn't really leave that extra room of tolerance, and so the button sticks when you push down on the button here. So every time I push the button when I'm closing it, you can get that stick. It's gonna feel a little sticky and it doesn't feel that nice, to be honest. Um, it's a eventually it'll probably wear in. If I flip this enough times, it'll eventually the button will smooth itself out. Either the finish will come off of the button and give it more room to move in and out more easily and more smoothly, or if I could disassemble this, I would just add a little bit more oil, maybe some like nano oil or something to kind of um, make it a little bit more smooth. But unfortunately, I don't have a 1/16 Allen key, so I can't even take this knife apart yet to add that oil. So every time I flip it, I don't know if you can hear it, but yeah, definitely there's a bit of lock stick there. Another thing is just sitting here flipping this thing all day. I think they could have added a little bit more chamfer or make the handles a little bit more rounded. I guess it feels really boxy in the hand. So that's another thing I didn't care for as much. That there's not enough chamfer. Like on the titanium models, I think they got like a little bit more of a um, roundedness to the handles here, but on the aluminum ones, it's kind of like just two slabs of like uh, you know pieces of metal slapped together that wasn't really chamfered as much, and so like I said, when you hold it in your hand, it doesn't feel as comfortable as holding something like a a um, Shiro here, where it's got more chamfer, it's more rounded on the sides, so it feels a little bit better in the hand. Or on the Osborne here, they chamfered it up down here a little bit on the scales, and so it just feels a little bit better when you're holding it. Where the aluminum is really thick. It's the thickest aluminum slabs you'll see, and I don't think they didn't mill it out in the inside, so it's just two thick slabs of aluminum. They didn't really chamfer it out, and it just feels kind of blocky in your hand. Another hit to this knife is when you push it on the button here. After a while, like my fingers start to kind of rub on the scales a little bit, and it kind of hurts. Like not really hurt, but like you can tell that it just after a while, if you do this with your index finger a lot, it's just your index finger is just gonna kind of eat it. And the main reason I think, or one improvement they could do here, is put a little bit of a more champering right here where the button would be pressed down, kind of like a Shiro, where they have like this champering right here, if you can kind of see it, where you push the button down, so when your finger goes down, it goes a little bit into the into the frame here, so it doesn't really feel like there's more space for your fingers. So when you push down on um, the the um, the button here, it just doesn't feel as bad. So I guess that's just kind of a knock against the knife in that sense right here. Like I feel like they could have added a little bit more champering. I get it. It doesn't. It won't look as nice. It won't look as it'll mess up the lines of the knife a little bit. But that's a little bit of comfort they could have added there. Um, Jimping. They could add jimping onto the spine of the blade. I guess you don't really need to. Like holding like this is fine to cut stuff for regular duty cutting. So yeah, I don't think you need chamfering, but it would have been a little nice to have something here, just kind of as a point of reference, kind of like how the Shiro did. They didn't really have like too major of jimping, but it did have something where you can kind of place your thumb and kind of have a reference point there. So I think that's something they could have added right here on top, just to make it a little bit more. Give you, I guess, a point of reference, but not a huge deal. I really do like the pocket clip. The pocket clip's really nice. I finally got to carry it today and slip it into my pants, and then came in and out just fine. So nothing wrong with the pocket clip. I think it's really well designed. I like how it's this part is insetted, so when you slip it into your pants, it doesn't catch onto the screws or anything like that. Really nice there. The only other thing is I think this part where they have the pivot point thingy. I forgot what it's called, but basically it has two screws on both sides. I think it could have been done a little bit better where maybe they could have just had this closed off. Because to kind of take this apart, you need two screwdrivers on one on both sides to completely remove it. But I think if they just on the show side here, if they just made it kind of like a screw that just goes into the frame of the lock would look a little bit better rather than having like a screw on both sides, I guess. If you know what I mean? Because the screws on both sides, it's two short screws that go into the pivot thingy. Um, I forgot what the name of it. Sorry, but yeah, they kind of screw into there, and the threads are on the pivot rather than the scale itself. But I think if they had it on the scale, it would just look a little bit better. Um, or they could do something like a spider coil where there's no screw at all. It's just a the I guess the lock stabilizer or the lock bar thing, whatever you call it, just kind of sits between the two frames there. No need for screws or anything like that. But I think they could have done that instead of just having two T6 screws on both sides. It just doesn't look as right. Um, yeah, but in terms of my first impression, it's still a really fun, really good knife. Uh, Pricing could be a little bit better. I think it could be a little bit cheaper, I guess, but because they're so popular, I think you know they're priced okay MSRP wise, but on the secondary market they're definitely a little overpriced. But for the knife you're getting, I think if these slabs were titanium and they made like a flat like $300 or whatever, I would be okay with that. I think that would be a perfect kind of price point. Like $300, you get nice steel, titanium handles, maybe a different allow you to kind of swap out your backspacer or something, and maybe a little bit more champering. And I think this knife would be definitely great. But the way it is, I'm thinking that maybe they do come out with future releases. They'll make small improvements here and there, kind of like the Sabenza, where they make small improvements, and hopefully they update the design to incorporate some of the new stuff. Incorporate some of those changes. But like I said, it's still a fun knife, and it's very comparable to the Benchmade. It's what surprised me is how hefty it is, how weighty this thing is. It's it's my second most heaviest knife after my PM3. My PM3 is just really thick. It's got metal liners, even though it has carbon fiber scales. It's just overall, it's just a bigger, thicker knife than all my other knives. But this one, yeah, it's actually pretty heavy. It's heavier than what I thought. Like, let me actually bring out a scale and I'll kind of show you how heavy it is. Not like it weighs a ton, but it's definitely a noticeable weight. So we're gonna do this in grams. So we put my knife on here. So it's about 90 grams, or about about basic 90 grams here. You have the Benchmade here. Well, this is not really a standard configuration, but we'll give you an idea. So this is about 64 grams. So this is already about 25 grams heavier. Or sorry, 15 grams heavier. Yeah, 15 grams or so heavier if I'm doing my math right. No, I'm not doing my math right. 25 grams heavier. It is about 25 grams heavier. Here's a wrong knife. Here's a full titanium Neon Zero, and they're about the same size in terms of like blade length, about 3.3. Handles about the same. I guess this is another good comparison. Here is the Shergov Zero, about the same length. I want to say, yeah, it's actually about the same length actually. If I put it down like this, just kind of eyeing it, but yeah. So this one is full titanium. It's the scales are milled out a little bit, and it's actually lighter. I thought this was gonna be lighter than my Shiro, but yeah, my Shiro comes in at 82 grams, so this is about 8 grams heavier. I don't know if aluminum is lighter than titanium. I think it is, but the titanium slabs here are definitely thinner, for sure, and they're milled out, so that's probably why it's so much lighter. But I mean, it's got a nice backspacer here, and it's got a titanium pocket clip, where this one I think is just like aluminum pocket clip and aluminum handles and everything. But yeah, this is surprisingly heavier than the zero the Shirogov Zero here, which is really interesting. I guess the blade wise, definitely a thicker blade too, thicker blade stock, um, and that could contribute to the weight. This is M390, but I don't think there's much of a difference in terms of weight between M390 and um, 45 steel. So, but the Malibu's definitely got a thicker thicker spine and everything. Where like the Zero here, it's chamfered. It's got more cuts to it. It's slimmed down. It's grinded to a finer point. It's a hollow grind versus this is a little bit different. So I don't know. For the price of the knife, um, yeah, I think it's still a pretty good knife. Especially the regular models, you can find them for about $200. Really good competitive pricing. But for the most part, you'll find them in about the 250, 240 range. And I think that's a little expensive for the kind of the materials you're getting, especially aluminum. Like I just don't know. I just don't like aluminum handles as much. I would like to get a titanium Malibu if I can find one, but those are kind of sold out and they're kind of pricey for what they are too. Like the titanium handles, your minimum is like $400, um, which is for one of their first production knife. I guess is okay. I mean, it's comparable to I guess a Chris Reeve Sabenza at that point, but with the Sabenza, I know I know what I'm getting. Where with this, it's kind of like I never handled a ProTech knife. I never used a button knife, so I wasn't too sure what to expect. And while most of my expectations were met, there was a little bit of disappointment in the knife here for me. But yeah, I think I'll keep it. I'll continue to use it. Maybe when I find something, either a titanium handle or a different non-DLC blade, I might buy that and swap this out instead. But yeah, I think it's a good knife. We'll see how it wears over time. I may even just keep it, honestly, and I don't think it's a bad looking knife, especially when it's all blacked out like this. It definitely does look nice. But besides those few minor points, yeah, I rate this. I would give this like an 8 out of 10 probably. Good knife. In terms of value, I'll probably give this a 7, maybe in 6. I don't think the value is there per se. But in terms of like looks, I give this like a 9 or a 10 in looks. It looks really nice. Feel in the hand, probably I would say a 6 or a 5 to me. It's like so. It doesn't feel that great in my hand, especially for a blade this big and heavy. I was expecting a more substantial handle to go with it, and that's kind of like the letdown there. Either we need a titanium handle or something that's a little bit, I guess, meatier, and that's coming from me with a medium-sized gloves. It just doesn't feel right in my hand compared to like a 940 or a Shiro or even a small Sabenza. I think even a small Sabenza might feel a little bit better in my hand than this one does. Um, yeah, I think that's about it, and I hope you guys enjoy. I am probably gonna pick up another knife or so. I think I want to pick up a 31 Sabenza. If not, I was looking into picking up maybe another Shiro or really don't know yet. Maybe there was another knife I was interested in, but I can't quite remember the name right now. But yeah. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time.